this week, news broke of a tragic police-related shooting involving an Australian woman who had called the cops to report a possible sexual assault in the alley behind her home. Now, unfortunately, when police arrived to the scene and she approached their car, the cop in the passenger side of that car shot and killed her. And the only thing that we know so far is that the police officer who was driving talked to investigators and said that they heard a noise that startled them, which is why he opened fire. Now, I give you that context because the commentary involving this story is different from the commentary that we typically see in police-related shootings or police-involved shootings. The cop in this case who opened fire is a Muslim. And all of a sudden, conservatives who are very pro-police are speaking out against this cop because he's Muslim. Case in point, Michele Bachmann. She was at a gubernatorial event in Minnesota, and she gave a 45-minute rambling speech. And during these 45 minutes, she wanted to touch on the story involving this shooting. Here's what she had to say.
There was concerns in St. Cloud. St. Cloud now has about 16% Somali of the entire St. Cloud population. People were concerned in the St. Cloud area about how their area was changing. When Governor Dayton went to St. Cloud, his response was, if you don't like it, then you can leave. That's what he said to native-born Minnesotans. This isn't about being mean to Muslims. This isn't about being afraid of people with a different skin color. This is about Minnesotans who are saying the state is changing.
All right, so I'm setting this up for you guys. She kind of starts off by saying that, there's an issue in Minnesota. More and more Somali Muslims are moving in and people are really concerned about their safety and well-being. Then she gets to the cop shooting that I mentioned earlier. Take a look.
That's what I saw in Congress. That's what I see in Minnesota. Too many people who are being afraid of being called racist, bigots, Islamophobes. I'm not afraid of it. Because what we have to do is talk about the truth of the problems that are going on in Minnesota. Look at Saturday night. Look what happened Saturday night in this state. We had a man, Mohammed Noor, who was an affirmative action hire by the hijab-wearing mayor of Minneapolis, Betsy Hodges. We don't know exactly what happened. We don't know. All we know is that a beautiful 40-year-old Australian woman thought she heard a sexual assault ongoing in the alley behind her home at Washburn and 51st Street in Minneapolis. So she called 911. She was a brave woman. She called 911. And what we know from the news reports is that she ended up out in the alley. She was wearing her pajamas. So now just think of this. 911 got a phone call of a possible sexual assault. A woman comes up to the driver's side of a police car in her pajamas. You would think that the response of the police officers would be to protect the woman who is coming up to the side of the car. She had no gun. She had no weapon of any kind. Instead, Mohammed Noor, we know, unholstered himself, pulled out his gun, violating protocol, reached across the chest of his partner riding in the car and shot the woman through the window in her abdomen, killing her. I'm not condemning this police officer because I don't know. But I do know in that culture, the women are covered from head to toe. And a woman in her pajamas standing out in the alleyway, we don't know again why it happened. But what I'm wondering is this. Will the question that the BCA is conducting, will they ask cultural questions? What was the motivation? You see, in Minnesota, we have been marinated in political correctness so long, we dare not even allow ourselves to think about cultural questions. We're constantly condemned that we're guilty of white privilege and we're supposed to go through shaming classes because of our background and our heritage for Western civilization. That's again where I say kudos to President Donald Trump. If you haven't listened to his speech in Warsaw, Poland, listen to his speech. He asked the right question. He said, will the West have the will to survive?
I can't with her.
What?
I like just
let the war begin.
There's just so much to comment on. First of all, I love how she's like, we really gotta ask these investigators, are they willing to ask, the cultural questions? Okay, so is it all right for us to ask the cultural questions of white police officers who shoot and kill unarmed black individuals who are literally running away from them, not running toward them? Is it okay if we ask those cultural questions? Is it okay if we ask cultural questions about police officers who decide to shoot and kill 12-year-olds who are playing with toy guns within 2 seconds of arriving on the scene? No, we're not allowed to ask those questions. Those questions are uncalled for, right? But, it happens to be one time where a Muslim cop shoots and kills someone who, by the way, should not be a cop, who should be condemned, who should not be in that position at all because he obviously is not fit to be a cop, right? And he should be criticized. But instead of talking about, this is an ongoing trend among cops throughout the country where unarmed people are shot and killed because they're overly paranoid. They heard a noise, got startled, he opened fire immediately, right? That's the issue. It's not because she showed up in her pajamas, she's just literally pulling this out of her ass, right? She knows nothing. A lot of us know nothing. She didn't get shot and killed because she was wearing pajamas. She got shot and killed because we have a problem with training police in the country. It's something that we've been arguing about and talking about nonstop for several years now. But we can't ask cultural questions of white cops.
Well, she might also have been killed because this guy had a mental problem. She might also have been killed for a number of reasons. The priority should be, are we gonna find out what happened?
Right.
We do not need to drag it through this like he's a Muslim. Just listen to yourself.
It's like literally the first time conservatives are criticizing cops, but they're not criticizing cops. They're criticizing one cop because he happens to be Muslim.
But when she throws in the hijab wearing mayor, I mean, that kind of, she puts almost too fine a point on it.
Head to hoe, from head to hoe, hashtag from head to hoe. Hashtag head to hoe. I don't even know what that means. I also can't take serious someone when in a sentence when they use the word pajamas.
There used to be a news outlet called Pajamas Media.
Really?
Yeah, they might
so
still
weird.
exist.
Also, how could he see she was wearing pajamas if she was through a door?
It was
and a window,
11:30 at night.
and it was late at night.
Yes.
So that's the stuff. And then she says people who are afraid to be called racist.
I'm not afraid to be called racist. We know.
It's like that. Who cares what you're called? You're being super racist when you're saying
xenophobic.
An affirmative action hire by the hijab-wearing mayor.
Yeah.
Because, and why? Because it reveals that when you see her hijab, the tone of voice you're using, the way you're using it, the obvious reasons you're using it is because when you take that, you make a bunch of assumptions about her that are all negative. And you're making generalizations in a negative light, that's racism.
And the thing that frustrates me about this whole situation is now you're setting a tone or setting people up to defend the cop, right? What the cop did was wrong. The cop murdered someone. The cop murdered an innocent, unarmed person, okay? Don't create a situation where people now have sympathy for what happened or for him. Like, he should face consequences for what occurred. But she immediately, and it's funny because Cenk and I jokingly mentioned, people are probably gonna handle this story differently or comment on this story differently because it's a Muslim cop. But I didn't really think that was what was gonna happen. And it happened. It happened. I guess I'm incredibly naive.
Yeah.
No, it is weird. It seems so clear cut, but to bring the whole, to use it as a platform to bring in the race argument and that this religious integration of our community has to be looked at in some new way because you see what it's leading to. It's a wild pivot, man, and she made it. It's crazy. The cops are too scared. They're driving around scared. And by the way, the media makes them even more scared, right? We elevate everything to the level of every stop is going to lead to violence potentially, and they carry that with them, and it echoes in their mind. Anyway, on this point, it's a crazy pivot she made. Crazy.
Yeah.
She said it might have been a quote cultural seizure he had. Is that like epilepsy? Like I don't know what medical condition cultural seizures are.
That's what happens when I see a Cuban dude.
Like, yeah, you have a cultural seizure. And then this is a really great one where she says, she talks about Trump and the vice presidents. She describes them as regular guys who don't mind being called racist. I just don't get that. The whole, she's trying to glom onto this, and this is like, they're regular guys because they say racist stuff. Like they're all that scene from Gran Torino. Like they're all kind of walking around being like, it's cool. And trying to use racist statements as making you a regular person. So they are trying to normalize racism.
They want to wear it as like a badge of honor. You know what I mean? And it's super interesting because she also talks about white privilege, and you can tell when that phrase is used, it really gets under her skin. And so it's interesting to see how she can say like, oh, people are obsessed with political correctness, they get offended so easily, and then you just say white privilege and her head explodes. Right? And so I don't know, I'm white. The phrase white privilege doesn't make me feel bad about myself, right? It makes me recognize an actual issue, and it doesn't take anything away from me. It doesn't mean that I haven't achieved anything on my own. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it's just like this fundamental misunderstanding of what that phrase means. And anyway, it drives me crazy.
If you like the Young Turks, you'll love Young Turks membership. TYTnetwork.com/join.